What if the absolute worst enemy you will ever face in your entire life isn't a master manipulator lurking in the shadows, but your own habit of rushing to please people who treat your boundaries like temporary suggestions? The most unsettling truth about human behavior is that you are actively training the world how to treat you every time you prioritize someone else's comfort over your own mental peace. When a predatory personality scans a room, they don't look for weak targets. They look for individuals who lack emotional awareness and who panic under the slightest bit of social pressure. By breaking down the advanced educational psychology behind behavioral shielding, you undergo a staggering human transformation, evolving from an anxious, easily swayed people pleaser into a highly analytical, fiercely protected strategist. This is the ultimate masterclass in advanced psychological analysis, structured specifically as an educational roadmap for absolute self-protection, mental improvement, and the profound self-growth required to build an unshakable psychological fortress around your mind. The absolute foundation of human autonomy and behavioral self-protection begins with the systematic implementation of strong boundaries. In educational psychology, a boundary is not an aggressive wall meant to punish others. It is a clear, unyielding line that defines where your identity ends and where another person's influence begins. Manipulators constantly test these lines through micro-encroachments, such as showing up late, making passive-aggressive jokes, or demanding small, unjustified favors just to observe your baseline reaction. To apply this principle deeply to analyze and manage human interactions, you must treat your personal limits as absolute, non-negotiable laws of physics. When someone crosses a line, you do not offer long, emotional explanations or engage in an argument. Instead, you state the boundary with calm, neutral authority and immediately enforce the consequence. By remaining completely indifferent to their complaints or dramatic reactions, you trigger a profound psychological shift in the other person, forcing them to either respect your sovereignty or remove themselves from your space entirely. Once your boundaries are anchored, you must activate the secondary layer of defense, rigorous critical thinking. The human brain is naturally wired to conserve energy by relying on mental shortcuts, cognitive biases, and emotional reactions, which is precisely what dark psychology exploits through manufactured crises or fake urgency. Critical thinking is the deliberate process of deconstructing incoming information, questioning motives, and separating verifiable facts from emotional manipulation. To utilize this cognitive toolkit deeply in high-stakes environments, you must treat every emotionally charged statement directed at you as a scientific hypothesis that requires empirical proof. When an individual attempts to flatter you, shame you, or isolate you using social pressure, you internally step back and ask, what is their covert objective? What data supports this claim? By demanding objective evidence and refusing to accept logical fallacies or emotional appeals, you completely neutralize the manipulator's ability to rewrite your reality, rendering their gaslighting tactics completely useless against your intellect. This intellectual defense is completely unsustainable without a deep mastery of emotional awareness. Emotional awareness is the advanced psychological capability to observe your own internal state, your fears, insecurities, guilt, and desires, without allowing those fleeting emotions to dictate your outward behavior. When a manipulator attempts to weaponize your empathy or trigger your anxiety, they are looking for an immediate, unthinking behavioral reaction. To execute this level of emotional discipline on a profound level, you must develop a hyper-aware internal monitoring system. The moment you feel a sudden surge of guilt, a desperate urge to over-explain, or a wave of panic during a conversation, you recognize it not as a call to action, but as a physiological indicator that your psychological system is being actively tampered with. By labeling the emotion internally, noting exactly how it feels in your body, you detach yourself from its grip, allowing you to remain completely stoic and strategic while the other person desperately tries to find a crack in your emotional armor. The final, crowning mechanism that locks this entire psychological shield into place is the absolute refusal of rushing decisions. Human logic and critical thinking completely disintegrate when the nervous system is forced into a state of high cortisol survival mode by artificial deadlines or manufactured emergencies. Manipulators know that if they can force you to answer immediately, your brain will naturally default to compliance just to make the immediate psychological pressure disappear. To deploy this counter-strategy deeply, you must adopt an unbendable behavioral rule. The more urgent the demand, the slower your response must be. When pressured for an immediate commitment, you look the person directly in the eye and calmly state, "I need time to review this, and I will give you my answer tomorrow." If they push back or claim that the opportunity will vanish, you simply accept the loss with total indifference. By taking control of the clock, you completely shatter the manipulator's artificial momentum, forcing the interaction to play out on your terms, with your logic entirely intact. Deconstructing these highly sophisticated behavioral defense mechanisms is the definitive turning point for your personal self-growth, permanent awareness, and total mental improvement. True human transformation happens the moment you realize that your mind is an absolute sovereign territory, and that no one can manipulate you without your unconscious cooperation. When you master the educational framework of psychological self-protection, you no longer walk through life as a fragile target hoping for the best. You walk as an unshakable force who reads the social landscape with absolute clarity. By elevating your awareness through advanced behavioral psychology, you ensure that you are never a casualty in someone else's hidden agenda, but always the absolute architect of your own destiny. The moment you realize you have the absolute right to make the world wait for your answer is the exact moment you break every hidden string they were using to pull you.